I would say the Blazer Remus lenses are pretty good, specifically because of their size, their price, and their characteristics as anamorphic lenses. So I'm trying something a little different with these videos from now on. I'm putting a lot of effort into each one of them, and although I really enjoy it, I can't really keep up with client work, family, and high effort YouTube videos. So I figured I'd start with a video about these lenses because it's super easy to talk about them because they're just good. They are as close as it gets to the anamorphic lens set that I was personally looking for that I can actually afford. I'm filming on the Remus 45 for this angle and the Remus 65 for the second angle, and they are both wide open at T2. I didn't personally use them at T2 specifically because there's a ridiculous amount of bokeh and it's not super easy to keep focus, but also because they are a little soft at T2, but as you can tell just from the images, they are usable. I actually received these lenses 2 days ago, used them on a short film literally the day after, and I'm making this video the day after the short film, specifically because my thoughts about the lenses are super fresh. The good and the bad, as well as my personal experience using them on an actual set and not just tests in my backyard filming my cats and my baby. I'm just sharing my thoughts on them, adding another opinion on YouTube about these lenses that are actually really, really good. We'll first touch on the size. These lenses are a lot smaller than they look online. Most of the time it has that PL cap on the back, so it makes them look a lot longer. But once you take that off, these things are super tiny. This is the 100 mil, and it's the biggest, heaviest one in the set, and it's not even that heavy. I can balance it on my Ronin 4D with the counterweight, and it's not overpowering the motors, which says a lot because the Ronin 4D can't really handle too much weight. So these lenses are super versatile for that reason. But the thing that amazes me about these lenses is not just the fact that they're so small, but that they're so small and they're built like tanks. Yesterday, we used them on a pretty rigorous shoot. We were outdoors shooting a day to night scene. I'm actually gonna be making a whole behind the scenes video for that specific shoot. So if you are interested, consider subscribing. But these don't have any scratches, and they were thrown around pretty aggressively. We're using them in sand all over the place, and I don't expect them to fall apart after one shoot, but I had full confidence in these lenses. There are certain lenses that I use that I kind of baby, whether it be vintage lenses or some photo glass, that I don't feel as comfortable using on set, but these just inspired confidence when I was using them. I actually have a scratch on the cap because they were handled a little roughly yesterday, unfortunately, but I have full confidence that these things are gonna last a really long time. The focus ring is super smooth, as well as the aperture ring. Everything just feels nicely made as a cinema lens should feel. I say should feel because that doesn't happen all the time, and some cinema lenses unfortunately are not built as well as these lenses that cost a fraction of those. I do briefly want to touch on their price because that's why most people want to get these lenses, and then I'll touch on the image quality because they're like married together. They're the reason why you would get the Blazer Remus lenses. So these are, I think, $24.99. I could be mistaken. I'll throw it up on the screen. But they come with this really oddly colored orange case. It has all the spaces you need. It has one extra space that I throw all the caps in and all of that. It's just a nice case that comes with the set of lenses if you decide to buy all three. These lenses have been compared to the Atlas Mercuries many times, and there's a good reason why. The actual lenses themselves look very similar to the build and shape of the Atlas Mercuries. Their characteristics are very similar. I've used the Atlas Mercuries personally, and I didn't notice that much of a difference when I was using the Blazer Remus lenses. The one difference I did feel though was the fact that these cost a fourth or a fifth of the price of the Atlas Mercuries, and I had to rent those, and even that was pretty close to the price that I paid to buy this whole 3 lens set. So the actual price of these lenses is extremely competitive. I've used the Sureis, the Laowas, all of those, and they're more expensive and don't look as good in my opinion. But none of that would matter if the image wasn't usable or different than everything else that's on the market right now. And the Blazer Remus is usable and different than everything else on the market right now within this budget anamorphic space. The barrel distortion is beautiful. When I was looking at the image in my monitor, it felt like I was watching a movie through my monitor. So that was super inspiring for me. The bokeh looks really good. It has that waterfall-esque type of anamorphic bokeh while still only being 1.5 times stretch, which is important. That's the main reason why I like the Ava scope. I made a whole video on it on my YouTube channel because it was 1.5 times stretch, so I can use it with a 16:9 sensor. I didn't have to have an open gate sensor like the Lumix, which obviously is beneficial, but I didn't have to have that kind of sensor, and I could still use most of my image without having to crop in a ton. So 1.5 times stretch while still having that anamorphic characteristic is beautiful. Like I mentioned at the beginning, they are a tad bit soft, wide open, and it was slightly difficult to nail critical focus on the fly. We didn't have a gigantic team or a first AC to pull focus for me, so I was doing it myself, which that's what I think most people are gonna be doing with these lenses because they are so competitively priced and they do have a very short focus throw. But here's something important I want to mention, and it's not just talking about anamorphic lenses, how they're supposed to be soft and whatever. I get it, but it's also, I don't know. It just, that doesn't make sense to me too much because if I can soften it up myself, I'd rather have that while still having all the anamorphic bokeh and whatever. I don't buy a lens because it's soft. That's just me personally. I do soften up my images though. I like them soft, but I don't want them to be permanently soft and have to sharpen them later. Anyways, that's a side note. But the point I was trying to make was the fact that anamorphic lenses have crazy bokeh. So if it's a super shallow depth of field at f2, it looks wild. Like the 45 even looks wild and it doesn't have tons of compression or tons of bokeh, but it looks crazy because it's anamorphic, and I would choose to shoot it at 2.8 anyways for that specific reason. It's not like a spherical lens where at f2 you still kind of desire to have an f1.4 or f1.2, which is nuts, but an anamorphic lens is slightly different. I use them at f2.8 anyways. f2, it's just a wild amount of bokeh. I would probably use it at f2, but it's not that big of a downside for me because f2.8 is plenty of bokeh, plenty of background separation, and I just don't need f2. It would be nice to have, and I could still shoot at f2 and have a usable image. And after I properly shim them, it'll probably be even better. But where they're at right now, I think it's safer to shoot at f2.8. And now for some of the quirks, which there aren't many, this is its main quirk. The 100mm is the lens set's main quirk. I don't know what they do to make lenses. I'm not super knowledgeable with all of that, but if this was sharp at 2.8 and it opened up to f2, or it was just sharp at 2.8, then it would be much more usable. Obviously, I can step down to f4. It's super blurry anyways because of the compression with the 100mm, but I don't enjoy the fact that I can't shoot at 2.8 when I need the light. f4, you're already eating a bunch of light if you're shooting at night. At that point, you might need to either add lights or you have a camera that does pretty good in low light. Again, that's not that big of a deal, but it's this inconsistency kind of thing that Blazer Greatjoy did with their last set of anamorphic lenses that I wish they would have had a little bit more consistent. They at least got that constant squeeze ratio though, which for me is one less thing I have to worry about on set. This wasn't supposed to be an in-depth review. I don't even have a ton of things that I could say about these lenses besides the fact that I do enjoy them, and I definitely think that they are worth the money. I don't know how they did it. I don't know if they just put their Blazer Nero and then their primes that they made, or I have no idea, but I don't care. They look good, and that's all that matters. They're easy to use. They're lightweight, which is such a plus for so many different scenarios, and they're built like tanks. They might not be super sharp at f2, but for me, that hasn't been an issue whatsoever. Also, one last thing to think about if you are wanting to purchase these lenses is that I personally wouldn't use them on any client work that I have, specifically because they aren't super sharp and they are pretty stylized. The Greatjoy 1.8 times anamorphic lenses, I would be way more comfortable using because they still have that anamorphic look, but they are pretty sharp, wide open. Even these lenses stop down aren't as sharp as the 1.8 times Greatjoy anamorphic lenses. That's why I think those are more expensive. But if I did have some crazy stylized, maybe fashion shoot or commercial, I would probably use these lenses. But that's something to keep in mind. Some people, they compare the two lenses all the time, and I think they're for a different audience. These aren't for the same audience that the 1.8 times lenses are for. I've had those for a while. So if you are thinking about picking up a set, I would give my stamp of approval. Obviously, if you don't have the work for it, probably don't get it, but they are cheap enough where if it's for personal use, it wouldn't hurt as bad as buying Atlas Mercuries. If you're buying Atlas Mercuries for personal use, I would just, I don't know, throw your camera out the window. Just stop. That's all I'm gonna say about the Blazer Remus lenses. If you like the images in this video, I used Phantom LUTs to grade everything. I'll have them linked down below, as well as links for the Blazer Remus lenses and all the other gear that I used in this video and all of my other videos. They are affiliate links, so it does help this channel, but I didn't start this channel or have this to make a ton of money, nor am I making a ton of money. I just love sharing my thoughts on gear, as well as saving people time and money by sharing helpful tips for their filmmaking journey. If that's a specific topic that interests you, I actually have a whole series I started that's called Teaching a Beginner, where I'm mentoring somebody through the filmmaking process, going through all the ins and outs and helping them not make the mistakes. And hopefully by you watching, you won't have to make those mistakes either. But that's it for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.